And you were saying that is one of the key distinctions between philosophy and science, is that science doesn't play philosophy's game of moving the opposite direction. It
Philosophy
only,
doesn't philosophy does,
yeah,
doesn't have the benefit of, well, said the sorry, the
yeah,
opposite.
either way, yeah, yeah,
Philosophy doesn't have the benefit of having the evidence. It doesn't have the empiricism. So the way that I always describe
yeah,
philosophy, I mean, philosophy should, good modern philosophy should take into consideration our knowledge, the things that we can claim to know about the world based on science and deductive reasoning. But the way that I always describe, um, I describe science as an epistemology. So it's a philosophical domain. So it's a way of going about trying to
right.
figure out how the world is, how to figure out what we can claim to know about the universe. And philosophy is the interpretation of what we can come to know in science and how to
Hmm.
interpret it, and to go beyond what we can know based on empirical evidence using pure reason. Philosophy is then where we carry on beyond what we can claim to know empirically. And so, from that perspective, philosophy is what deals with ideas like truths and proofs.
Yeah.
Truth is a conversation for philosophers. It's beyond our reach scientifically.
It's
I
just that we
believe
don't
there's an
know them.
objective reality in principle,
Yeah.
but I don't believe we can claim to know what the truth of things is. If
So
that,
is there anything that we can know? Like if I use in a sentence, I know X, I know, and I say not X is true, but I say I know X. Would you say, oh no, 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 you're out of bounds. You're not
so
allowed to say you know
from an
X.
epistemology perspective, I refer
Yeah.
to a hierarchy.
Yeah.
There is there's belief, there's knowledge, and there's truth. Where truth would be
Okay.
the highest epistemic confidence we can have. Whether we can have it in principle or practice is an
Right.
open question. Knowledge is something that is more certain than belief because we have reasons and evidence which we can bring to bear, which is stronger than mere opinion, mere belief.
Yeah.
And truth is the ultimate
Right. The
claim.
theoretical absolute final measuring stick.
Yeah. And so that's why I wear a brain of vat to
Yeah.
suggest to you that we cannot know anything with certainty, that at best we can asymptotically move towards a more
Right.
likely truth, but that we may never in principle be able to get there because we cannot know demonstrably that we're not wrong, that there's not, and that's why I said Cartesian skepticism has value, because how can you truly know
Hmm.
that the universe that you believe exists does not have is not an illusion?
So let me role play my typical interlocutor at this point in the conversation and say, given that truth is beyond our epistemic reach, given that we cannot know with certainty, even if we agreed that there's a theoretical, objective, moral reality,
I believe there is a truth
but we can't. But
in
if we
principle.
are unwilling to assert that we know it, what's the functional difference? You're saying, well, in theory, there is a reality. In theory, there are moral truths. But since we can't know them with certainty, I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like that kind of knocks you back down to relativism.
No, my argument is that um, I created a heuristic. I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
call it a philosophy because it sounds presumptuous, called probabilitarianism. So I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
that what's interesting is what's probable. I think so that I think the world of the probabilistic is the world that we exist in, and that's the most interesting area of inquiry. And I think a concern for truth and a concern for certainty are aspirations that I don't find interesting.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I concede that they exist, but I don't, in practice, necessarily think they're either interesting or achievable.
Wow. Okay, I feel like that I'm gonna Given that we can't know for certain, let me just concede that our knowledge is limited and faulty. We have beliefs, but we have to acknowledge that our belief does not constitute a certain knowledge about the truth. I don't know if I'm using those words exactly
Well,
right, but I'm trying to
let me
reflect
say it in
back.
a different
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
I think we should focus our attention on the distinction between belief and knowledge,
Okay.
and I think that we should value knowledge more than belief. I think because we can bring to bear better reasons for knowledge than we can for belief, and we know how flawed belief is,
Hmm.
and that knowledge is essentially a tentative thing.
Okay.
It's subject to change.
So it's not out of bounds to say we know something. It's just that
No,
you want people to make knowledge assertions of knowledge to be caveated with a like, well, here's my degree of certainty I attribute to this knowledge
correct.
I have.
So I think knowledge has the most
Hmm.
value, and I think we should be careful to attribute high
Got it.
levels of confidence, certainty, if you want, to our knowledge claims. And then I think we should not spend much time talking about truth.
All right. So let me
So
concede that for
I am
now.
very
Yeah.
careful and try to avoid the word truth, especially truth with the capital T. If you want to talk about true in the layperson definition, as like
Yeah.
it rained in downtown Ohio
Right.
yesterday at 12:30,
Yeah.
then I'm fine with that definition of
Right.
true. But if you're talking about truth with the capital T, I don't concern myself with that sort of thing.
Okay. So let me concede that for now, and I'm going to move to slide 3. Working backwards through my slides here. Given all these limitations and constraints and gaps and our cognitive biases, all these things that make us have to acknowledge and bake in that we aren't fully certain, right? So we can have knowledge, but it's probabilistic. I think that's to reflect that back.